He was once a prince of Egypt, but now he wandered forgotten in the desert. For 40 years, nothing extraordinary happened, only sheep, sand, and silence. Each sunrise looked the same as the last. Each night ended under the same stars. To Moses, it must have seemed that his life was over, that his past failures had buried his purpose. Yet one ordinary day in the wilderness, everything changed. The man who once wore royal robes now wore the rough cloak of a shepherd. His hands, once soft from palace life, were hardened by years of guiding sheep over rocky hills. His sandals were covered in dust, his face weathered by sun and wind. Moses had fled Egypt after killing an Egyptian, and the memory of that moment followed him into exile. He was no longer the bold young prince, but an aging shepherd, married to Zipporah, father of children, servant in the household of Jethro, the priest of Midian. He might have believed his story had ended here. But the wilderness was not the end. It was preparation. For 40 years, Moses learned what no palace tutor could teach him: patience in silence, strength in weakness, humility in obscurity. He guided sheep, but God was preparing him to guide a nation. On a particular day, Moses led his flock to the far side of the desert, to Mount Horeb, later known as the Mountain of God. The air was dry and hot, stones baking under the sun. The silence was broken only by the bleating of sheep and the crunch of sandals on gravel. Then something caught his eye. A bush was on fire. At first, perhaps he thought it was a brush fire, not uncommon in the dry wilderness, but as he watched, amazement grew. The fire burned brightly, flames curling and leaping. Yet the bush was not consumed. Its branches did not crumble, its leaves did not fall. The fire raged, but the bush endured. Moses stared in wonder. He said to himself, "I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up." Step by step he drew nearer, curiosity battling with awe. The closer he came, the more he realized this was no ordinary fire. It seemed alive, purposeful, holy. Then suddenly a voice called to him from the midst of the flames, "Moses, Moses!" Startled, Moses stopped. His heart pounded. His staff trembled in his hand. He had heard his name before, but never like this, spoken out of fire. He answered, "Here I am." The voice replied, "Do not come any closer. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." With trembling hands, Moses untied his sandals. Dust clung to his bare feet. The ground, once ordinary, was now sacred. The wilderness had become a sanctuary. Then the voice declared, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." At these words, fear overwhelmed him. Moses hid his face, afraid to look at God. The God of his ancestors, the God of covenant and promise, now spoke directly to him. The burning bush was not just a marvel, it was a revelation. Fire normally consumes, but this fire preserved. It symbolized God's presence, holy, eternal, powerful, yet merciful. The flame revealed that God is not like man. His holiness purifies without destroying. His presence burns without consuming. For 40 years, Moses had believed he was forgotten. Yet here in the desert, God called his name. The staff in his hand, once only a shepherd's tool, would soon become the instrument of miracles. The mountain where he stood, once barren and empty, was now holy ground. The man who thought his life was finished was about to begin the greatest chapter of all. The lesson is timeless. God reveals himself in unexpected places, not in palaces or temples only, but in deserts, in exile, in the silence of ordinary days. Moses did not seek the fire sought him. He was not chasing destiny, destiny called him. Barefoot in the dust, his face hidden, Moses stood trembling before the eternal flame. Everything he thought lost, his strength, his purpose, his calling, was being restored. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had not forgotten his covenant, and he had not forgotten Moses. In the wilderness, on an ordinary day, a holy fire changed everything. From the burning bush, God's voice spoke again, not only to reveal his holiness, but to declare his mission. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob was not distant. He had seen the suffering of his people in Egypt. He had heard their cries. He knew their pain, and now he was ready to act. The voice said, "I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey." Moses must have felt his heart pound. For 4 centuries, Israel had waited for deliverance. Could it be that God himself was announcing that the time had come? Yet the next words must have struck him like thunder. "So now go, I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." Moses froze. Go back to Egypt? Return to the land he had fled in shame and fear? Confront Pharaoh, the most powerful man on earth? The command seemed impossible. His first response came in a rush of inadequacy. Who am I, that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? For 40 years, Moses had lived as a shepherd. He was no longer the confident prince who once acted boldly. He was an old man, exiled, forgotten. In his eyes, he had nothing that qualified him for such a task. But God's answer was simple and profound. I will be with you. God did not reassure Moses by listing his strengths or skills. Instead, he promised his presence. The success of the mission would not depend on Moses' ability, but on God's faithfulness. The same fire that burned without consuming was now the fire that would go with him. Yet Moses hesitated again. Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, "The God of your fathers has sent me to you." And they ask me, "What is his name?" Then what shall I tell them? It was not only Pharaoh he feared, but also his own people. Why would they listen to him? What authority did he have? God answered with words that echoed through eternity. I am who I am. Say to the Israelites, I am has sent me to you. This was more than a name. It was a revelation of God's eternal being. He is not bound by time, not defined by circumstance. He is the God who is, who was, and who will be. He is self-existent, unchanging, faithful. The mission rested not on Moses' weakness, but on God's identity. Still, Moses' doubts did not vanish. He imagined the people rejecting him, mocking him, refusing to believe. Fear whispered louder than faith. This hesitation reveals something deeply human. When faced with God's call, many of us first see our own inadequacy. We remember failures more than promises. We measure the task against our weakness instead of God's strength. Moses' trembling questions echo our own. Who am I? What if they don't believe me? But God patiently met his fears with truth. He declared, I have watched over you. I have heard the cries I will deliver, and I will be with you. At the burning bush, the conversation between Moses and God stretched into a battle between divine calling and human hesitation. Moses offered excuses, God gave assurances. Moses pointed to his weakness, God pointed to his name. This moment was not only about freeing Israel, it was about transforming Moses. The man who saw himself as nothing was learning that God is everything. The one who hid in exile was being called to stand in faith. The shepherd who led sheep would now lead a nation, not by his own power, but by the presence of the great I Am. The fire still burned, unconsumed. It was a mirror of what God was doing with Moses himself. Though weak, though flawed, though fearful, Moses would not be destroyed by the task ahead. He would be sustained by the one who called him. So the call continued. God unfolded his plan, promising signs and wonders, assuring that the elders of Israel would listen, and that Pharaoh, though stubborn, would eventually yield under God's mighty hand. Still Moses hesitated. His lips formed questions, his heart wrestled with fear. But the bush kept burning, the voice kept speaking, and the call of God pressed forward. The lesson is clear. When God calls, he does not ask for confidence in ourselves, but for trust in him. Our excuses may be many, but his presence is enough. The mission is not ours alone. It belongs to the great I Am. Moses stood barefoot before the burning bush, trembling at God's call. He had already voiced his doubts. Who was he to face Pharaoh, and what if Israel did not believe him? Yet God did not grow impatient. Instead, he stooped to Moses' weakness, offering assurance after assurance. The Lord said, What is that in your hand? Moses looked down. In his grasp was nothing more than a shepherd's staff, smooth wood worn by years of use, the tool of a herdsman. He answered simply, A staff. God commanded, Throw it on the ground. Moses obeyed. As the staff struck the dust, it writhed and became a serpent. Startled, Moses leapt back, but the voice came again. Reach out your hand and take it by the tail. Fear battled obedience, but Moses stretched out his hand. The moment he grasped it, the serpent stiffened and became a staff once more. This, God said, is so that they may believe that the Lord, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you. But God was not finished. He told Moses, Put your hand inside your cloak. Moses obeyed, slipping his hand against his chest. When he withdrew it, his skin was leprous, white as snow. Shock coursed through him. Then God said, Put your hand back into your cloak. He did, and when he drew it out again, his flesh was restored, whole and healthy. God declared, If they do not believe the first sign, they may believe the second. But if they do not believe either of these signs, then take some water from the Nile and pour it on the ground. The water you take from the river will become blood on the dry land. 3 signs, each a revelation of God's power. The staff-turned serpent displayed authority over Egypt, a land where serpents were symbols of royal power. The diseased hand healed again revealed God's ability to afflict and to restore, and the water turned to blood foreshadowed the coming judgment upon Egypt, as God's and Pharaoh's pride. Yet even with these assurances, Moses' fear clung stubbornly. He raised another objection. "Pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue." Perhaps Moses remembered his years in Egypt, his failed attempt to help his people, his exile. Perhaps 40 years in the desert had worn down his confidence in words. Whatever the reason, he insisted he was not the right choice. But the Lord answered with a question that cut through his excuse. "Who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go. I will help you speak and will teach you what to say." Still Moses resisted. His final plea revealed the depth of his fear. "Pardon your servant, Lord. Please send someone else." For the first time, the Lord's anger burned against him. Yet even then, God's mercy remained. He said, "What about your brother, Aaron the Levite? I know he can speak well. He is already on his way to meet you, and he will be glad to see you. You shall speak to him and put words in his mouth. I will help both of you speak and will teach you what to do. He will speak to the people for you, and it will be as if he were your mouth and as if you were God to him. But take this staff in your hand so you can perform the signs with it." God met every objection. He supplied every weakness. He provided Aaron as a partner, not to replace Moses, but to strengthen him. Still, the staff remained in Moses' hand, a reminder that the power was not in eloquence nor in confidence, but in obedience to God's word. The scene reveals the extraordinary patience of God. Moses hesitated again and again, yet God continued to reassure. Each excuse was met not with dismissal, but with provision. Where Moses saw failure, God promised presence. Where Moses feared rejection, God gave signs. Where Moses lacked eloquence, God offered Aaron. The burning bush conversation was not only about Israel's deliverance, it was about the transformation of a reluctant shepherd into a servant of God. Moses would not go to Pharaoh with persuasive speech or personal strength. He would go armed with signs, supported by his brother and sustained by the promise of the great I Am. The lessons linger. God does not wait for perfect confidence before calling his people. He does not require flawless speech or unshakable courage. He asks only for willingness, and where weakness exists, his power supplies what is lacking. Moses' objections mirror our own. Who am I? What if they don't believe I cannot speak well? Yet God answers the same, I will be with you. At Horeb, the bush still burned, and the staff still lay in Moses' hand. The mission was no longer a vague possibility. It was certain. The God who spoke from fire had equipped his servant with signs, with words, with a companion. What remained was the step of obedience. The dialogue at the burning bush had reached its climax. Moses had spoken every hesitation. Who am I? What if they do not believe? I am slow of speech. Please send someone else. Yet God had answered them all, with promises, with signs, with provision. The fire still burned, the voice still called. At last the reluctant shepherd yielded. He picked up the staff. It felt the same, smooth wood, familiar weight, but it no longer carried the same meaning. Once it had guided sheep, now it would point kings to God's will. With it, he would confront Pharaoh, strike the Nile, and raise it over a sea that would open. Ordinary tools become extraordinary when surrendered to God. Moses descended Horeb and returned to Jethro. He did not boast of visions. He asked simply to visit his kinsmen in Egypt. Jethro blessed him. Go in peace. The man who had fled in fear now departed in faith. On the journey, the Lord reassured him. Those who sought his life were dead. The past no longer chained him. Zipporah and his sons traveled with him, a family bearing both burden and promise. Along the way, a sudden crisis pressed them to align fully with the covenant. Even before Pharaoh, Moses himself had to be consecrated. God shapes his servants before he sends them. Meanwhile, God moved Aaron to meet him. At the mountain of God, the brothers embraced. Moses told Aaron everything, the words, the signs, the promise of God's presence. Aaron would be his spokesman and Moses God's messenger. They would not walk alone. Together they entered Egypt, the land of brick and whip. Their first audience was with Israel's elders. The staff became a serpent and back again. Moses' hand, once leprous, was restored. These signs were testimonies the God of Abraham had visited his people. The elders believed, and the people bowed in worship. Hope, long dormant, stirred again. Yet the road ahead would be hard. Pharaoh's pride would resist. The people would complain. But the mission was no longer in question. What God had declared in fire could not be undone by human refusal. Moses' obedience did not remove struggle, but it guaranteed presence. The same presence that made sand holy would make slaves a nation. Notice the shape of his obedience. Moses did not suddenly become eloquent. He remained aware of weakness, but he moved his feet in the direction of God's word. Faith often looks like that. Not dazzling heroism, but a steady yes, step by step with the promise beside you. The staff in his hand preached silently. Power is not in the wood, but in the one who commands it. The servant is not the source, the messenger is not the message. When the I Am pledges his nearness, human limits cease to define possibility. Moses would feel small before Pharaoh, but the presence would not be small. This return reframed his entire life. Palace years, failure, exile, decades among sheep, none were wasted. The God who burns without consuming, redeems without discarding. Broken vessels are not thrown away, they are refined. The fugitive who once ran from consequence now walked back into danger, not because he enjoyed risk, but because he trusted the caller. So the mission began. The elders believed. Aaron stood beside him. The staff awaited commands it could never perform on its own. The God who had heard cries and counted tears would now stretch out his hand over an empire. Soon the Nile would testify. Soon darkness would fall. Soon a sea would part. But before wonders came obedience, and before deliverance came a man who said at last, "Here am I." The burning bush had taught him this. Holiness does not crush those God calls, it sends them. Fear bows, excuses fall silent, and ordinary ground becomes the threshold of history. Moses left the mountain smaller in his own eyes, but steadier in his steps. The fire remained behind him, but its light guided his road. He had been prince, fugitive, shepherd. Now he was what grace makes of the willing, an instrument of the living God. The journey from Horeb ended at Egypt's gates, but the story was just beginning. The I Am had sent him. The I Am would sustain him. And the people in bondage would learn what Moses had just learned at the bush. When God is present, the impossible is only the next chapter.